Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for May the 13th, 2010 will come to order. Please stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Need a motion on approval of minutes.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We have first item number 3 is on consent. It's Quail Ridge of Vero Beach request. It's quasi-judicial. Would anyone who wishes to speak to the issue please stand to be sworn in?
Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I need to announce that I'm going to recuse myself from this issue, owing to the fact that I was involved.
Yeah, you may not be on there, Dave.
Sorry. I was involved in the comp plan amendment that was tied to this, to the change in the Ag PD language that was associated with this project. And so I'm going to remain mum.
Counsel?
That's fine. I've already spoken with Dr. Cox,
Okay.
and we've discussed this. He's not going to participate in the conversation, nor is he going to vote.
He didn't file ahead of time, so he can't discuss as well.
I've just given him his information. So, but because he's not planning on participating, he doesn't need to file yet.
Okay.
He's got the form.
All right, thank you, Dr. Cox.
He's going to give it to you.
And Bob?
Does anybody want to pull the item off consent? If you just vote, I move we accept the consent agenda as presented.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion carries. On to the next subject.
For fear of that hour-long presentation.
He saved you. Thanks, George. And
Public hearing.
now we go to the public hearing. Item number 4, Lazy J LLC. It's legislative.
Okay.
Billy.
Good evening, Commissioners. Bill Shute, Indian River County Planning Department. The request before you tonight is for a small-scale amendment to the comprehensive plan and a rezoning. It's to designate plus or minus 1.05 acres from L2 to CI for the future land use, and to rezone those acres from RM6 to CL. This is a small-scale amendment. Small-scale amendments are exempt from the twice-a-year limit of the normal comprehensive plan amendments. It's more of a streamlined review process. There's fewer potential impacts involved with these small-scale amendments. The threshold for small-scale amendments is 10 acres or less in size, and it doesn't involve any environmental lands. The location of the subject property, it is located west of Old Dixie Highway and south of 10th Lane. And here's a blowout version, and then a close-up with an air photo. It actually consists of portions of 3 parcels. As you can see on the future land use map, or this portion of the future land use map, the area is largely commercial industrial and also L2 designation. And the subject property along Old Dixie Highway is the only remaining section that is still designated L2. If you were to approve the request, then it would be filled in with CI. In the existing zoning, in this case, we have a lot of industrial, IG, heavy commercial. On the west side of Old Dixie, where the subject property is, there's a lot of commercial light or CL, as well as some OCR to the south, and all the CL and OCR abuts residential RS6 and RM6. The criteria analyzed with this request is we looked at the concurrency, consistency with the comprehensive plan, environmental impacts, and compatibility with surrounding uses. With respect to concurrency, sufficient capacity in all concurrency-related facilities exists, and a detailed concurrency review will be done at the time of project development. As far as the objectives and policies and the consistency of the comprehensive plan, one objective and 3 main policies were applicable. That's 2.2, 4.3, and 1.22. In particular, future land use element policy 1.22 and 14.3 are being highlighted for you tonight. Future land use element policy 1.22 says that a CI node cannot be expanded unless the node is 70% developed or unless otherwise warranted. In this case, this CI node is over 89% developed, so the request is consistent with this policy. Future land use element policy 14.3 requires that 1 of 4 criteria be met to approve a comp plan amendment. 1 is a mistake in the approved plan, 2, an oversight in the approved plan, 3, a substantial change in circumstances, or 4, a swap or reconfiguration of land uses at separate sites. In this case, it meets number 3, a substantial change in circumstances. Here you have a node that has been developing over the years and is 89% developed. Compatibility. To the north of the subject property is a vacant parcel, an older residential use, and I want to say it's electrical subcontractor building. To the south, you have CL zoning, same as to the north, and that's general retail uses in there. No incompatibility. East, there's CH zoning, which is your heavy commercial, so no incompatibility exists there. And west is where you have the RM6, RS6 zoning. 4 residents is abut the property. In this case, if we're approved and during the site plan review process, you would require a type C buffer with a 6-foot opaque feature, which is 15 to 20 foot of landscaping as well. And just to highlight a few of the properties that were mentioned in the staff report, the one highlighted in white here, that is actually owned by Lazy J LLC. It's an existing residence. The applicant's representatives actually indicated their intent to potentially use that for soft improvements for this site if it were to be developed with commercial industrial, thinking future land use, light commercial uses. This property highlighted in white, we described in the staff report as being the flag lot. You can see it's kind of oddly configured as a real long, skinny piece that kind of touches this property, but the house itself is really quite far away from the property. The southernmost has a corner that touches it. This property actually has, I'm trying to remember back from the staff report, I think 180 foot of linear portion of its lot touching the existing CL zoning and retail uses that are south of this property. And the other residence is an older residential unit that's highlighted there in white, and that would be subject to the type C buffer, the 6-foot opaque features as well. And I didn't highlight the parcel right to south of it. That's actually part of the Lazy J LLC as well. The subject property is outlined in red, but the middle property actually goes all the way back and into this portion. I can't quite highlight it now, but it's the same shape and size as that white one right above. Just move it down. In conclusion, the requested comp plan change and zoning is compatible with surrounding uses. It's consistent with the comprehensive plan. It meets concurrency tests, and no additional environmental impacts. Staff supports the request and recommends that Planning and Zoning Commission recommend that the Board of County Commissioners approve the request to change the land use designation for plus or minus 1.05 acres from L2 to CI and to rezone those plus or minus 1.05 acres from RM6 to CL.
Thank you. Commission?
I have only one question. The backup material says that there's 80 feet of existing public road right-of-way on Old Dixie Highway. and 60 feet on 10th Lane. We own, I just want to confirm, we own all the right-of-way that you foresee as being required at this time, or wanted at this time, or needed at this time?
Yes, 80 feet is what we need on Old Dixie.
And we own
So,
it?
That's my understanding from the information that we have. But even if we didn't, at this point in time, we couldn't extract the right-of-way. But 80 feet is what we call out for Old Dixie.
I have a follow-up question, if I might,
Sure.
Go ahead.
and that has to do with whether there are any planned improvements in Old Dixie along this segment.
Yeah, I've got actually a copy from the capital improvements element. Just at least for the next 5 years, the only thing planned along Old Dixie is, I believe it's a bridge around South Relief Canal
Right.
project.
It's just such an abysmal road. I have one other question, if I might,
Certainly.
and that relates to notification. What are the notification requirements for adjacent property owners in this process?
300 feet.
Okay, and they have been met, I'm sure.
Yes, I think we had 29 surrounding property owner.
28, 29, somewhere thereabouts.
Yes. And we did give them notice of this meeting, and we'll give them notice of the Board of County Commissioners meeting. We also posted the property, and we also had an ad in the newspaper.
It's a,
Any other question by the commission?
300 feet.
Anyone from the audience wish to speak? You don't have to be sworn in. Just state your name and address, please.
Jessica Hawkins, 910 10th Court. The surrounding areas within 500 feet, isn't that who needs to be notified?
300. It's just
300 feet?
yeah.
Okay, well, there are people that, I don't know, can you put up your aerial again? I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Actually, how do you switch it over? Just go document. Oh, she wants the aerial, so I think we just go to staff PC, right? Okay.
There are people in that corner, that house that's right below the property that jogs down to actually touch the subject property. They were not notified. We've gone to all the neighbors in the neighborhood and have spoken with them, and 7 people we asked, only 3 were notified. And that property next to the one that actually touches the subject property did not know anything about it. And we have some concerns just for the simple fact that our property abuts the area to the south of the subject property. And we've had lots of crime in our neighborhood due to the fact that we are not buffered well enough from the commercial activity that goes on. I'm sure you all have heard about the robbery that happened at Mrs. Mack's. That gentleman left the scene of the crime with a loaded handgun and went past a school bus stop. That's a serious, serious problem. And I know, as a person with children, that's a major concern for all of us. That property that actually touches the subject property has probably 15 kids playing in it on any given day. They have a jungle gym in the corner of they don't have it in their backyard, it's in their side
Which
yard.
property is that? The house just to the south? Is that the south border?
Oh, yeah, the pointer.
This one right here. This house, they've got a big jungle gym right in here.
Oh, because of the little strip
Yeah,
that goes
exactly.
in there. I got you.
It has that long, skinny strip that touches. There's, like I said, probably 15 kids on any given day. They all ride their bike because it's right down at the end of a cul-de-sac and it's safe for the kids to play. But, just knowing the crime that's happened in the one plaza that's right behind us, it's just, there have been sheriff's officers that have told us that 9 out of 10 cars that are stolen in Indian River County are abandoned in that lot.
Bob,
I have a sheriff's report that's more than 50 pages of the crime that has happened in that local area. And go ahead.
in a zoning like this, crime, I mean, I appreciate what you're saying with crime, and it has to be considered, but if you look at the area, this is quite, I mean, it's heavy commercial all around. This is the
Right.
one piece of property that's left.
Right.
I think that notification, someone probably needs to talk to the sheriff's office, and they obviously know where this is, but
Right.
don't the new buffering rules compared to the old the old commercial there versus the new, what would be this here, the buffering will be a lot higher. We've got, what, don't we have to
Correct.
a B or an A? We go to at
Actually,
least a
it's-
B buffer,
It's a
right?
type
It's
C
a
buffer,
C.
right?
Right, it's
It's a
nothing,
C
you don't have
buffer.
anything like a, huh?
C in the back.
A C with a 6-foot opaque feature. So there will be a fence or wall or 6-foot vegetation or berm and vegetation. There'll be some combination.
George, I might point out, though,
I
that
thought it was,
buffering cuts two ways
I mean-
when it comes to security.
no, I know, I mean, it can help or it can hurt. That's the
Yeah,
thing on
that's
security.
the problem with it, is that it can hide people
Right, right.
as well.
But I mean,
Right. And a property like this is a difficult piece of property. We don't like strip commercial development. We don't like every piece of property adjacent to a road for one lot deep being commercial. But you also have the flip side here when you only have one minor
that's the last
segment.
piece.
Yeah.
I mean, you're worried.
It's not really promoting
it's been-
strip
it's
commercial.
kind of
But
preordained.
ideally, this isn't the pattern we'd like to see that's along Old Dixie Highway here. But when you come to it, it's always difficult in this case. It is a trade-off between whether or not to keep this residential, and obviously there hasn't been much interest over the years in putting residential right there on Old Dixie. So that's why the staff's always has a difficult situation with this when you've got an interface. You know, you're going to have you have a line someplace, and it's a question of where you draw it and where it's appropriate.
I don't think our issue is with the actual
zoning.
commercialization
Your
of the
issues
lot.
are-
It's the
Right.
safety of the people that live adjacent.
My
to-
daughter used to live about a block or so over from where you all are. I know the area.
Yeah, and we have issues in our neighborhood with speeding, and it's county-owned roads, and there's no speed limit sign, and that's a different issue. But it's just the safety of the residents in the commercial abutting areas that we're most concerned about. There are an awful lot of children in our neighborhood, and we're just trying to look out for them.
Mr. Chairman, at the chance of being slayed later by about 5 county commissioners, inasmuch as your issue is really not the zoning,
Right.
if I were you, I might show up at the county commission meeting when this came on and make the same statements and appeal to make it clear to them, and they might be able to talk to Darrell, to the sheriff, and
Right.
at least make it pointed, because, I mean, we're kind of out of our league around here, but,
Right.
you know, at
And-
least
and
you're
let-
on record, but I think the big record's next meeting.
But let me ask you, do you have a crime watch program in your neighborhood?
We do.
Okay.
We do. And there are sheriff's officers who rent homes in our neighborhood. And, you know, so there are detectives that actually live that use unmarked
that's-
cars to come home. So there are things, but stuff does happen. My next door neighbor had his car stolen out of his driveway in the middle of the night.
I like this. This is where all the stolen cars. Maybe we ought to just a parking lot instead or something.
You know, I mean, so it's one of those things. My husband had his car broken into twice, you know. And
I'm really
it's
not
just
laughing. That's sad.
It really is, and it's not the only crime that's happened in our neighborhood. I have the police report that can show you thousands of things that have
But
happened.
I think that's what I believe
That's-
vocally. You just kind of walk
Right.
this up the line, and
yeah.
maybe you may help yourself that way.
And another issue that we have as homeowners after the hurricanes was the cleanup from the debris from the commercial property that all blew into our yards, and we were having to pick up roof and pieces of, you know, signs and things like that. It's not buffered enough so that I realize that during hurricanes, everybody has to clean up everybody else's mess because it just blows everywhere. But my kids are trying to help, and it's glass, and it's all this commercial debris, because right across the street is R.J. Crane, too.
But by
So-
not changing the zoning on this building, though, do you really on this property, that you really believe that'll help you?
Well, there are so many homeless people that live in that area right now that I'm not quite sure that that'll stop either. They all live behind the Hess
They have a
station
building,
on
if someone
US
buys
1
it
too.
commercially and puts a building up, it's got to help.
Well, there's a Hess station on US 1 too, and there's people that live in those woods right behind it too. So
You feel then that the elimination of the vacant lot and it becoming commercial, it would be a greater risk because of the possibility of injury to children if the commercial comes into that area?
that's the biggest concern our neighborhood has. Yes, is the safety of our children. And it's our biggest concern as parents, and we have to do everything we can to stand up for our children because they can't come here and speak for themselves.
How do you think making that commercial would be a negative impact versus having it an apartment building?
Well, you have people that would, probably have kids that would be in that area if it was an apartment building. It used to be an apartment building when it was the old hospital before it burnt down. So, it was apartments at one time. It was residential use.
Do you have anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rich Harrison, and I represent Lazy J for the development on this. What we're looking to do is not develop the whole property. That's why we're cutting out just the front part to rezone for commercial. I can't imagine in this little space there building any residential. It just will never happen. What we're looking to do is something that I envision being compatible to the shopping center that adjoins to the south, which is, I think, the Dixie Plaza. The back part of the property, as Bill had stated, would be used for soft improvements such as the retention pond and so forth. The two old houses that exist on this property that's very old, they would come down. I think it would be a great improvement. Everything around it on Old Dixie is commercial or industrial. The impact on traffic or so forth is minimum. And we even tried at one time over the last several years for the is it Habitat of Humanity for some homes in there, and they wouldn't accept it.
Right in the middle.
I think it'd be a good improvement for the property. Thank you.
Let me ask you a question. It has nothing to do with our vote, but
Yes.
what are you considering for a development there?
I envision approximately 10,000 square feet. This little strip center, similar to the strip center that adjoins the property to the south, which is the Dixie Plaza.
It doesn't really matter. He would be allowed to have anything that would go commercial.
Right.
So, it's I'm sure that's what he wants, but people can say anything now, and that's just so you know. We've got to consider it based on the property accordingly.
All the allowances.
Yeah.
But that's why it's commercial limited. Is just and we could only develop like 10,000 square feet. Mm-hmm. That's not much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, sir, I have a question of you. When you say you're cutting out the front part, this is a small piece of property, so are you saying you're using the rear of the property for the infrastructure, or I don't know what you meant when you say you're cutting out the front part. And is the front part the part on Old Dixie?
There are 3 lots.
Maybe you could use the mouse.
Yeah, you can use the mouse.
The reality is you're talking about a solid piece of property, and that's all site plan stuff. what his implication is
I
not.
want her to hear it.
Okay.
Right. Oh, okay. Okay.
Do you want to put it on there? I've got it so that it's,
We actually have them highlighted.
And the site plan
We
won't
can
come
switch over to
before us.
doc cam because she has them highlighted on there if you want.
yeah.
Okay, see?
They're
Yellow
highlighted
highlighted?
in the yellow area.
Okay.
That's how the property.
Right. And we're looking at, the mouse doesn't work anymore?
Yeah, not in this case. Just on the doc cam, so lower point from here.
Okay. You can see how the lots are there? We're taking it from...
Okay.
But this is part of the property right here also. This one piece comes back, as does this. That's what happens to the driveway.
All
Is he
right.
being picked up, Bob? Yes, he's okay.
Okay, now I understand what you meant when you said that.
Okay. Good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of staff? Yes. Would you like to speak, sir?
Yes. William Skolaski, 920 10th Court. I have concerns because I actually was one of the only ones who got anything in the mail. And, you know, I felt there should have been a lot more notice than that. I went around and talked to 7 people and only 3 had heard anything that are in that area. So I don't think it's fair that we're not representing ourselves properly because we weren't notified properly. Other concerns that I have is with that also going commercial. We're already dealing with situations of butting up against commercial property. After the hurricane, we did not get the same buffer zone that we had originally. First of all, it took 7 to 8 months for anything to be done. And then when they did do it, they put up another wall 2 feet away from the old one, which created a 2-foot trench wide by 4 feet deep all along everybody's property that we had to fill in. Second of all, we didn't get a solid fence. We now have a fence that is plaqued like this. Okay, so at 5:45 in the morning on Thursday, when the garbage trucks come, we hear everything. Everybody is woken up. Now, we were supposed to be protected before. How can we expect we're going to be protected and what is said is going to be done is actually going to be done this time? We haven't gotten that from the previous situation already. Second of all, there are multiple locations in that strip mall that are already empty. So now we're going to flood the market and close out some more places and have some more dead property that as people are driving around looking for places to live, they say, oh, this area must be run down because there's not a lot of business here. I mean, I think those are very valid concerns. And as a community and as a county, we need to look at the fact of what we're allowing to go on right now. And where is it getting us in the future? You know, how are we increasing the value of our property right now? And I don't see this as being one of those items. Thank you.
Sir, you can also you have the opportunity. You could go in and see staff and look at the rules associated with that type of development, so that you could see the type of buffering and all of the conditions that have to be met by the owner in association with the properties around it.
Yeah, and we're going to send a code enforcement officer out there. Sometimes we don't know what's going on the back of property, and if they're not up to code now, we will make them meet code back there.
Okay.
Bob, this site plan will not come before planning and zoning, will it? It's too small.
No, it'll be under 150,000 square feet of impervious, but we can get the contact information for everyone here and invite them to come to our technical review committee meeting so they can be notified. If you can just get, or I think we probably have all their names and addresses.
So you'll get another opportunity to appear before staff to see what's going to be done in technical review.
Is there any data to suggest that a commercial enterprise like this is going to attract more crime than if it was a residential, if it was apartment buildings?
I don't think we have any information, say, on square feet of retail, how many and what type of crime that you have. No, we really don't.
Any other questions? We'll have a motion.
Close the public hearing.
Get one.
We need to close the public hearing.
I'm sorry. Close the public hearing now. And now, wait.
I understand their concerns. I also think it's kind of it's a tough situation in the regards to everything else is done there. So, I mean, hopefully we can do some good with what their complaints are, but I would move approval because I don't see any reason this shouldn't be commercial under the circumstances either.
Second.
And I guess another one of these situations, George, where I do grudgingly agree with you. But I also I totally agree with your recommendation that they carry their thoughts forward to the county commission and to the sheriff, because it's unacceptable that this sort of stuff is happening there, and I don't, in light of not having any evidence that residential versus commercial zoning causes increased crime, I think what is likely to be going on is that diminished enforcement is allowing things to happen in that particular place, and code enforcement as well as law enforcement. And I think that needs to be a strong message that gets carried forward. And I hate to kick the can down the road, but I think that what we're here for, the applicant meets the guidelines and
Rules and regs.
Yeah.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. Commission matters?
One thing, real quick, just in light of David's comment, and confirm or not, since it's fresh with him having to recuse himself, we have a form that we fill out that if you fill it out in advance, then you're allowed to participate in the discussion, but not in the vote. Whereas if you don't fill the form out, then you're not allowed to participate at all. Is that correct, George?
That is correct.
Okay,
That's what with
so-
Dr. Cox, he did not want to participate in the vote. Or in the,
Right,
the
but I mean, I just, in
conversation
case anyone doesn't,
Future
other
reference.
people don't realize that there's a difference in how you do it as to whether you participate in argumentatively or not.
Correct.
Commission matters?
I have one thing that was actually brought up by this young couple. And again, the issue repeats itself about people saying they don't get notice. We just send this out regular first-class mail, correct? Yes. To the address on the county appraiser's website?
Yes.
Was it posted? We also went through the posting on the property, correct?
Yes, we posted.
Yeah.
Now, we used to send out with green cards with return receipt requested, but we now just send out regular mail.
Yes.
Was that a cost-saving measure?
Yes.
So if somebody has gotten a post office box and they do not, the mail, the address that the county appraiser has is not that post office box, the mail gets returned to the county?
We do get mail returned. I don't know in this case. In this case, we don't have the list of surrounding property owners with us. It's in the office. We will check that tomorrow. And I don't know if we got any returned on this.
I did not.
So I don't think we did. Bill's saying we didn't.
So
but-
anybody who feels that they should have received notice and did not receive notice, should they contact the...
They should contact Bill in our office.
Okay. So just call the county administration office and ask for the planning department and
Yes.
ask for Bill.
If someone further outside of the 300-foot area does request to be noticed, you would notice them for the county commission meeting then? You would add them to the mailing, even though
Sure,
they're outside
yes,
the 300
yes,
feet?
Yeah. But we will check tomorrow. I mean, we're pretty diligent about using that. We use GIS. We identify all of the property owners, and we send out notices. But we will triple check tomorrow.
Bob, I know that you have made extended effort. We went through this about 2 years ago, I believe, and I just think the green card, for as important as it is in a situation like this, I think we should send out those green cards so that we know if we haven't contacted someone. I think it's that important. I don't think the cost is worth the convert on that.
With it being a cost matter, I know the county commission has been talking about that a lot lately, and but they balance it by saying that citizens have the ability to come and address their fears, worries, concerns before the county commission. But if they don't know about it, then they can't come and address those concerns. So it seems like to me the little bit of added expense to send a return receipt requested is fair. Thank you.
I think, though, both ways people get notified. It's just with the green card, we have evidence that they actually got it. And a lot of times, I won't say a lot of times, I will say a lot of times with code enforcement, people don't pick up certified mail because they know what it's going to be. And a lot of times we send out both certified and regular mail, code enforcement-wise, because they know they won't pick that up. But people will get the same amount of notice each way. It's just with green cards, we could definitively say, yes, this person did it. But even then, someone will say, I didn't get notice, and come to find out it was his kid who signed for it or something like that, or someone else in the household. We found there were a lot of problems still, even with green cards.
So you know yes, but you don't know no.
Yes, that's correct.
Well,
we hear it a lot.
Yeah. I think it's best to make every effort possible. And this is a good example of someone who wanted to know and they didn't receive the notice, apparently. So we need to make every effort to make sure that they are notified. Planning matters, the planning information packet, Stan. Are you going to comment on that DCA limbo issue?
DCA in limbo. As far as state legislature goes, they did not extend. DCA is still an operating department, and they did not, I guess, reauthorize DCA. And there's been discussion about it, but they're still in operation, and they can address it in the next session.
How long do you think they will continue to stay in operation?
They have a year, I think, don't they?
I think they do, yes.
One
That's
year
my understanding of it.
left.
But
the Senate okayed it, but the House didn't even consider it.
Gee, I wonder who did this lobbying for that one.
Stan, you want to repeat
Contact your
the number of
representatives and
changes
tell
that
them
have
you
occurred
want the DCA
since 2009, would
stay
you?
alive.
no, there's quite a bit, and I don't have a legislative update. I know you guys have seen different things and we've sent some along. And some you have to see if the governor is going to veto or not. We've still got a lot of legislation, and within the next week or so we'll know that it's finalized, but we can provide you all a summary. Even again, just like any year, but this year as well as last year, even when the legislation is passed, we have a 162-page bill we're looking at that is probably going to become law, that has some more extensions to it and things like that. But it's 162 pages, and once you read it, you kind of it takes a while to figure out what it means. So, but we'll be glad to give you guys an update on things that are coming up.
Anything else?
Just the other thing that we have some distinguished guests with us, moving on to some public works matters, that we have a dynamic duo from Public Works Department. We have the Public Works Director, Chris Mora, and the new traffic engineer, Michael Love. And we have David Gunner from Indian River Farms here to talk about roads adjacent to canals. And I'd be glad to turn it over to Public Works to discuss turn lanes, and then after you all are through with that, we can move on to the roads adjacent to canals.
Would anyone have any opposition to us going with the roads adjacent to canals first? So that I think everybody's got to be here for both, except Mr. Gunner, and that would give him the opportunity to
go home
earlier.
I object. I think we ought to keep David here tonight.
To the bitter end.
We're enjoying your company. Please.
So come on up, David. Come on.
Good for you, George.
I'm David Gunner, the superintendent at Indian River Farms Water Control District. Stan called me a couple of weeks ago and said that this was coming up. Evidently, somebody on the commission asked the question about the proximity of the drainage canals being next to the roadways. And it goes back to the original plat of the farms company for the 50,000+ acres that comprises the Indian River Farms Water Control District. The intent was for every 40-acre tract to have access to drainage and a roadway. There was a reservation of 30 feet off the tier of tracts to the south to contain a canal, and a reservation off the south end of the tracts to the north to contain a roadway. In 1912, it was horse and buggies, mules and wagons, and 30 feet for a roadway was sufficient. Over the years, the county has acquired additional road right-of-way adjacent to, and generally speaking, north side of the roadway, because the canal occupies that area on the south side. And as I explained to Stan and Chris, there's not a lot of need for roads if you don't have the canals. The 50,000+ acres, 50% of it was standing water, anywhere from ankle deep to shirt pocket deep. And if the canals are not there, it'll be that way again. So
that'll be it.
And so it's like Venice. We just go to boats.
Yeah, go to boats. The process of piping the canals is astronomically expensive. 84-inch pipe in the ground is around $1,300 a foot. So, and guardrails are an issue with maintenance. To meet the Green Book standard, to have the guardrail posts embedded in stable soil, you have to move back 5 or 6 feet from the top of the bank, and that keeps me from getting close enough to the canals to do the maintenance. So we attempt, by working together, to get an area or safe zone, so to speak, between the edge of pavement and the top of bank of canal. Gives me a place to run my equipment, do the canal maintenance, and generally speaking, there's buried utilities, water and sewer and reuse and whatever in that maintenance berm. And the large canals, the laterals and the outfalls, are owned in fee simple by the district. And, you know, we have allowed the county to build roads on those because our taxpayers need to go to and from just like everyone else does. And they are allowed to exist there through permit. And if for some unforeseen reason, say numeric nutrient standards comes along, and we have to widen that canal for some reason to increase storage or for some other reason, we have the option of saying, okay, county, you're going to have to scoot this road over a little bit because we need the land for something else. And luckily that hadn't happened, and hopefully it won't. But it's better than condemning property, homeowners, and they drive down there and they see this wide stretch of unused land. Well, why do you need to take my home when you've got all this to use? But I think the county and the district work fairly well together. We hammer out our differences, and if we have something where we have to put up a guardrail, we'll scoot it up as close to the top of the bank as we can get it, and they will put miscellaneous asphalt under it to keep it stable, and then I'll just work over it. So, but it drastically slows down the process of cleaning the canals, and at this time of year when we're getting ready for hurricanes, I'm glad there isn't a whole lot of it.
Yeah.
But if you have any questions.
David, how do you all handle, between the county and yourself, how do you handle any liability issues?
If the county builds the roadways to the Green Book standards, there's a presumption of
safety.
Compliance and safety involved in it. And since we're not in the road business, we're strictly in the drainage business, we defer to the county and we permit them to occupy that space with a permit under the assumption that they're going to build it as safe as the roadway can be built. I was talking to Chris this morning, and I said, the old days when the nut behind the wheel had to assume some liability for keeping the vehicle on the roadway seems to have passed.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. In the past, and for years, there was never any question of a problem, but I assume that as times have changed, that whether it's through the county or through the district, the potential for someone, they have to do is drive off the canal, and for whatever reason, and they're going to wonder why we haven't done something else, I guess.
I think, we do have vehicles end up in the canals, not on a regular basis, but occasionally. Usually it is the nut behind the wheel, maybe wearing his beer or whiskey goggles, and speed's usually a contributor, and you can't protect everybody all the time from themselves. I know we pulled several that in the past 10 years, maybe half a dozen vehicles out of the canals. Some of them were insurance jobs, where they ran them off on purpose. And, oh no, they stole that last night. So, but I think,
So the answer to the guardrails and the situation really is there is no answer other than what we're doing, or unless we're willing to move the roads and take land from the other side and move the road somewhere.
That's the cost
Which
involved in it. It's either
right.
that or piping it. And
Right.
the other issue with piping the canals is no matter what the stage is in the canals, there's some area of the canal system that is wood stork feeding habitat. And U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has an issue if you don't replace that habitat somewhere, either through a retention pond, the littoral zones in the areas around the retention pond. If you're just throwing a pipe in it and not putting in on-site retention somewhere along the roadway, then, they're going to object and you won't get a permit from them. So it's, that's another issue that has to be addressed if you're going to pipe it. And, we've piped a great portion of State Road 60 west of 66th in this State Road 60 widening project. But they have two large retention ponds that will replace that littoral zone for the wood storks to feed in. And the other option is to move out and take property. Maybe the option is skinnying up the medians and leaving some of the landscape out. Let's all live together and keep the water flowing and the traffic.
So the balancing act will continue.
Yes, it will. And I will work over guardrail if I absolutely have to. And the 16th Street project, there's a section in there that we're going to have to work over guardrail. And we'll just have to live with it.
It's time and money.
Dave, what?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jim.
Having grown up here, I don't see it as big of a problem as some of the people that have come here and not been used to it. I mean,
they've always been here.
It's always been here. We played in the ditches, and now being involved with Audubon, I like seeing the birds and the turtles and the alligators, and I know, like in a place like 16th Street, say between Kings Highway 58th and 43rd, where it's real close right there, and even though the speed limit's lower, if you put a guardrail there, rather than having a one-car accident, that guardrail is going to bounce that car right into the oncoming lane.
Yeah,
and so then you've got a two-car accident. And so it just, to me, we need to let some of the people be responsible for their behavior.
Well, we do live in a litigious society. And the county and the district are both government agencies, and we have a sovereign immunity. And about $100,000 is still a lot of whip out. And since the district is not in the road business, I can't address safety factors of roadways. The only thing I can address is the maintenance of the canal system and supplying my taxpayers' drainage, and the maintenance of traffic issues that we have in doing our work. Out on the rural dirt roads, doesn't seem to be a problem. The people see this great big yellow machine and slow down and drive around it. Once you get into the paved roads, they're blind. So you got to have somebody standing out there in the way with a flag saying, "Hey, whoa, slow down! Don't you see that thing?" So I guess it's just the cost of progress.
Let's go with that.
What is the approximate cost of a quarter of a mile of guardrail? Half mile?
Chris Moore, Public Works Director. Guardrail varies in cost depending on the kind and type of guardrail. Sometimes we have to do, like David mentioned, we have to put pavement underneath it to stabilize that area. Sometimes we leave it natural, and then we would just weed whack around it to keep the weeds down. But it can range anywhere from $10 to $20 a foot, sometimes more. So it's not a cheap thing to put in. And then you've got maintenance. And then the guardrail ends now have gotten very expensive because we have to put the collapsible, or what DOT calls the safe ends, the ones that when you hit it, they don't spear your car like in the old days. They collapse onto themselves and form actually somewhat of a crash cushion so that it slows the car down. But a lot of times the problem with guardrail is it has to be located between the canal and the road, and usually closer to the road. And you have to locate it in a specific location so that cars don't hit the curb and then vault over it, but they actually hit it and bounce back onto the road. And it can become a fixed object of itself, just by itself, because it's so close to the road. A lot of times the guardrail can become dangerous. So there's, within, David mentioned the Green Book, and the Green Book is the design document in Florida for roads. Now, the district isn't in the, as David mentioned, the district isn't in the business of designing roads, but we are. But the problem is many of our roads are either partially or wholly on district property. A lot of times when we widen a road like 66th Avenue, it's right up against the Lateral A Canal, so we have to buy property on the west side, because even though that road has been grandfathered in, and the Green Book doesn't make you go back and fix old roads. It just says that when you build new ones, you must apply those new standards. And the new standards for roadways mean that you have to locate them away from fixed objects or dangerous roadside objects like a canal, or poles or utility poles, things like that, anywhere from 14 to 30 feet, depending on the speed of the road and whether it's curbed or uncurbed and things like that. So engineers look at this green book, which is the design document in Florida, and we have to apply that. And the green book is a very serious document. It's reviewed by a committee of 28 engineers from throughout the state. 7 of them are from DOT, 7 of them are from the private sector, and then 14 of them are from local government, like cities and counties. And they sit down once a year, and actually many times a year, but once a year they meet and discuss all of the items in the green book. And the big item is, how do you design roadways? How big do you make this clear zone that they call along the edge of the road? It's called a clear zone or a roadside recovery area or a driver recovery area. But when we design a road like 66th Avenue that's too close to the lateral A canal now, but it's been grandfathered in, when we make 4 lanes, now we've got to move it all the way over to the west because we have to stay 24 to 30 feet away from David's Canal. And it should be away from the canal because that's a roadside hazardous object. So we have to buy right away and move it over. We can't do that to all of the roads. We simply can't afford it, nor should we, because the Green Book has grandfathered them in. And unless there was a specific safety issue, when our traffic engineer looks at the traffic accidents that occur yearly, and he looks at them and he decides that, well, there's a certain number of them and a certain segment of roadway is dangerous because people are going into the canal, then we would consider guardrail if it were to help that situation. But it's more like David says, they're kind of spotty. You might get one here, one there. It might happen 5 years apart. It's more of a driver error type of situation than it is a roadside defect. And we found that a lot. And if you look at all the hardcore traffic reports, I mean, they're usually driver error. Either someone falls asleep or under the influence or whatever. But we rely on that Green Book. We design all of our roads that we're building to the Green Book standards, and they're safe. And we also monitor all the existing roads. And if there were a problem, we would do whatever we had to do, up to and including guardrail if we needed to. And we would coordinate that with David because he has to get in there on those maintenance berms with a grade all or a drag line. He's got to maintain those canals and keep them free flowing so that he can get the rainwater through them. We're in the road business, so we have to coexist. But it's a tough job sometimes to have to do it, but we do our best with the money that we have, and we try and keep the roads as safe and efficient as we can make them.
Hey, have any other questions, Commissioner, or comments you wish to make? Mr. Gunner, do you have any other comments?
No, I think we've worked together well. I understand some of their problems, and they understand some of mine, and we sit down, try to figure out a way to make it all work and build a road.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for your time, Dave.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And now we can excuse Donna, and we'll go on to the next subject.
Yeah, I've heard this 1,000,000 times. I've tried to fight this issue before.
So you're going to throw the rookie in tonight, Chris? Is that the deal?
Hopefully I can lose the new from my title here pretty soon. Not sure how long that takes. Well, I appreciate being here tonight and meeting you guys.
You'll adjust.
I hadn't been here yet, so I appreciate that. Hopefully you'll get something out of the presentation. If you have questions, just stop me. I don't anticipate this being the first time being here, so I'll just give you a quick background. About 17 years in traffic engineering, designed hundreds of turn lanes. I've set policies for turn lane requirements, worked in the public sector, worked in the private sector, so I played both sides of the fence. The one thing is, don't hold against me. I'm from Ohio, so I'm a Buckeye, full-hearted Buckeye, so don't hold that.
That's too bad.
I hear that a lot.
You think all that matters, right?
I'm going to talk about four items First one, I'm going to define turn lanes. Going to go over some of the history of the standards in the past, and then talk about some of our current requirements, and then an evaluation that was done several years ago. Everyone knows what a turn lane is. We define it in the code. And for this discussion, for development, it's a left or right turn lane to be built on county road to serve a development. Just a quick example. Everyone knows what they are. Right turn lanes on the top and the left turn lanes on the bottom. This basically just shows right turn lanes are simple. Left turn lanes can be more complicated. Why do we need turn lanes? Increase capacity, increase safety, and most of the time we won't put a traffic signal in without a turn lane. Okay, where are turn lanes needed? Wherever there's a capacity or safety issue, whether that's a current problem or an anticipated problem, in the case of a development coming in, signalized intersections, unsignalized intersections, driveways, which include the Walmart driveways, anything along that category. We design by our standards. Chris had developed these years ago. We use these along with DOT standards, combination of the two. Our requirements are a lot more strict than the DOT. Some of the criteria in developing the turn lanes are more strict. This is just an example of a large intersection. Shows multiple turn lanes. It's kind of small. I apologize for that. It's got right turn lanes, left turn lanes. Same similar type thing for the full intersection. This one we use a lot. This is actually pertains to a development driveway or a local to a collector intersection where we actually develop the left turn lane. There's several parts to the left turn lane. There's the taper, the offset transition, and then the storage and the decel length. So here's some of the details. Turn lanes, they range between 280 feet and 500 feet. Storage, taper, offset, decel, that's all part of it, whether that be a right turn lane or a left turn lane. Don't know what happened there. That just says it can be difficult sometimes to have a left turn lane if there's a median spacing, opening the median, stuff like that. I apologize. Let's see.
Like a U-turn.
Do you know what's happening there? Yeah, I got it here. Yeah.
You want to just get on to our opinion before you know?
Turn lanes, they range in cost, $25,000, $500,000, depending on right of way, storage length, all the other things, but big range of cost. Left turn lanes more expensive than right turn lanes. Hopefully, there. Okay. So when should one be installed? That's where we're going to get into some of this old standards. Early 90s, I wasn't here. Development generates 75 or more. Right turn lane would be required. There was another step to it that says if the road had higher volumes, that threshold could be reduced to 40. These are the old standard again. If a development generated more than 30, turn lane was required. Really no discussion, no evaluations. In 2004, there were some concerns and hired a consultant to look at our process. They conducted a study, and what they ended up doing was adding another level of analysis that says more important roads, higher volume roads, less than 30 cars turning left would be required. And I'll show you some of that here. This is right from the code, and this is the chart that we use to determine left turns if they're required. As you can see, it's a gradient scale depending on the volume on the main line.
Would you go back to that slide, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
The right turn lane standards were unchanged. They stayed at 75 and 40. And then a couple years later, we reviewed our process. McMahon and Associates did that. They concluded that we have strict turn lane requirements, and one of the few counties that actually combined the mainline volumes into the equation. Later on that year, the board voted to maintain our current standards. Is there anything I can
Okay,
answer?
Can I ask a question, please?
I'm not sure. He's taking lessons from Roland.
Go ahead, George.
Okay, thank you. Michael, let me understand something, what you said earlier, because I think this has maybe been the first time I've heard it, and Chris, if it is, it's convenient memory. But Indian River County has stricter requirements than the DOT on turn lane.
Well, on some of the details.
In what way? Because here, the reason I'm asking is that what happens to us up here is that there have been numerous occasions when we understand that the potential traffic numbers turning right or turning left mathematically appear not to meet the standard. Having lived here long enough on a lot of the roads, we begin to worry that it doesn't take much to trigger a slowdown to other traffic, and we feel like it may not be required, but it would be a big convenience if the developer, someone could put in a turn lane to allow the flow of traffic to continue, even if it only stacked 2 cars. There would be, and we, even if it didn't meet a certain standard minimum that we could just move 1 car out of the way, it would make things, it would better. And that's why I'm just wondering how much room we would have to be able to tweak our current standards. That maybe we could get more turn lanes in physically if they were smaller, or whatever, than our code.
Yeah,
than our code, not DOT's code.
There's a lot of different parts of that equation that calculates the left turn lane length.
Now, I'll give you an example, which Chris will know. We have a school on 4th Street, west of 58th, that went in. And we had a long discussion about the turn lanes because there were a lot of people that were worried about it. We put a right turn lane in, and they have a huge amount of stacking in the school. 4th Street, there was not enough right-of-way, or we couldn't design a left turn lane off of 4th Street in order to make a left turn lane there. There was I can't remember the criteria, but I think that because of the number coming from that direction, it wasn't even close to triggering it or whatever. I go that way a lot now, and that's one of my trigger points that I watch because I remember all of our discussion. And, for instance, this morning there was 1 car from coming west to east on 4th Street. It happened to turn left into that school. 6 cars stacked up behind it. It took 15 or 20 seconds because at the same time there was plenty of room going in the other way. We had more stacking, plenty of cars coming in on the right turn lane during the peak hour for loading that school, but there was no space for that car to turn left. So it sat there until the gap occurred. We could have 1 lane, 1 spot for that car, and other traffic could continue. And that was the whole point of this, trying to make that left turn lane, rather than designed to strict criteria. Was there some way we could mold something in that would work?
Well, I think that it all comes down to how these things operate and how much money are you going to make a developer shell out to put a turn lane. We could make our standard.
In this case, you were going to make them paved. I mean, we weren't going to do this easily. This had to be to a huge standard. We'd have to handle the canal. I don't blame the guy. It was $1 million for that 1 little lane. We could have changed the drainage or something another way, to make it the criteria.
Exactly. That's why when he said it was less, I got a little. Schools are difficult because schools have a very compressed peak hour of operation. And you could make a case for the 15 minutes that a school loads and unloads in the morning and unloads in the afternoon. You could probably make a case for an overpass there, because it would sure make it a lot easier to get in and out. But would you put that cost onto the developer? Probably not, because it's just not reasonable.
Right.
So we were tasked with coming up with a standard that during the typical peak hour operation, what is a good limit threshold for which a turn lane is needed. And we looked at typical operations with a typical 120-second cycle length at surrounding signals and typical ADTs, and we looked at just how much delay would be caused by someone stopping in the through lane to make a left turn. Now, George, you mentioned, when they did that, 6 cars backed up. But how much time did it take to flush all that out?
22 seconds.
Right. So
you'd like to know.
So the question is, would you make and this is a legitimate question, would you make it let's say there were utility poles along there and it was going to cost $500,000.
I understand the cost reward. I mean, would we make them do that? It would depend upon the circumstance. The only reason I remember this one very clearly is it looked like to me that there was a way to fit in, if not an awkward 1 or 2 car turn lane that would never meet any standard that anybody would look
right,
good.
But that's where engineers
right,
but that's where engineers have difficulty, because Mike
and all of a sudden we're over DOT standards. So I'm wondering now if 10 foot wide and 20 feet long would have worked, or 30 feet, because we have our code would have smaller, shorter standard worked in that circumstance.
But the problem would be would you get an engineer to be able to design it and say that it met Green Book standards, by which we're bound? We have to put 12-foot lanes in. We have to do, we wouldn't be able to design one. So to design a standard turn lane with all of the transitions and tapers and storage lengths, you can't just put it in 10 feet wide and 20 feet long. Is the problem? So,
in that instance, it shows that. It would have to be an engineering answer, because I believe that when we had that discussion, I believe the school agreed they were going to try to get their parents to come in
the other way
east from another street and come in off 58th, so that there were...
Right, and I think they agreed to monitor the traffic, and if
I'm not knocking our decision because it's done, and you can't. I'm not trying to replay the past. That was one of the ones, and I know Donna. We all have our own pet little projects, so we tend to watch to see how well we did, or what the outcome measures for our own benefit in the future. And that's one that just sticks out, I remember pretty clearly. So I think the one thing we keep asking ourselves up here is we've got these strict mathematical terms, but we don't have any, and this is the dilemma with us, is that there are times we have what we consider more judgmental ability. Now, I don't want to get out of black and white. It gets rough, but there needs to be something on these turn lanes occasionally that, even if the county has to help, I think we'd have better flow. That's all. I've done my one thing.
Mr. Gunner.
I've got a pet peeve just like you, George.
It's not against me, is it?
No. It's against that school.
Yeah.
It was my understanding when we reviewed the plans for them to use part of our right-of-way for that roadway, that was for this initial phase, and if they expanded that school, took more grades, they were going to have to put in a left turn lane. And we have to drive our equipment east on 4th Street.
Boy, you get out there, it's going to get cute. Ooh.
And, you get 2 excavators and a crane coming out there during school, and we tie up traffic all the way back to...
Well, 4th is a lousy road anyway. I mean, it's not sooner or later, when we finish paving our grid and finish all these other roads out here, instead of paving 60 and the big roads, when we get back to our little roads, we'll be in better shape. But.
Well, it was my understanding that they were supposed to put in a left turn lane.
That was my comment to the MPF.
Either by piping the canal or some other before they expanded to school. But it appears to me, driving that road 20 times a day during all hours, that there's a lot more traffic now than there was the first 2 years when they were, quote, full. So something has happened, and there's no left turn lane.
Actually, let me just tell you, David, they did have the turn lane requirement as a condition of Phase 2, but it wasn't to put it in. They have given us $350,000. I think it's $350,000 for the turn lane to be used to put in a turn lane when it's needed. So
I think we need it.
And when the right-of-way is acquired.
And then it's back to the green book.
I thought we indicated that it was needed at Phase 2. You're saying
It moved
Released that.
at our level. It went, but it was modified
released by
at
the
the Board of
BCC,
County
right.
Commission meeting. I
Thank
think.
you. What happened to the one on 58 that was supposed to be put in? The contractor paid us $25,000 toward that, the improvement to make a left turn lane northbound on 58, make a left into the development.
Are you talking about north of 510?
The Paladin project. No, north of 60.
North of 60.
What was that? Something Lakes or?
Hidden Lakes?
Oh, Hidden
Far as
Lakes?
Waterway.
No.
Not Waterway. Hidden Lakes.
Hidden
Hidden
Lakes.
Lakes.
The developer paid us $25,000 to put in the left turn lane when we made the adjustments to the red light there just south of his project.
I thought we
Never
refunded the
went
money.
in.
We ended up refunding that money, I believe.
Yes. But that's disappointment because that's 58th. We decided to keep it 2 lanes. We
Right.
really should have had that left turn lane. The developer paid for it, and it will never happen.
Well, the issue was, I think at one time, 58th Avenue 4-laning was in our road program, and we thought that it was easier to build the turn lane as part of our project, so we collected $25,000, or we collected the turn lane amount from the developer, thinking that when we built the road, we would add that turn lane as part of our project. When the board took that off of our CIP, and it was no longer a viable project, we then had to refund that money because we weren't going to be able to build it for him.
Actually,
And
no.
he couldn't build it for $25,000.
Right.
We'd already taken it off the CIP. We were going to make some improvements to the intersection just south of it and add his left turn lane in with that improvement. So it had already been taken off the CIP for the 4-lane.
But the project that was going to tag along with, I think, has been removed now. I don't think we're doing that.
See, and that's not fair because that left turn lane was put in there for a reason. It was a safety factor. And just because we didn't go through with some improvements, we never got the left turn lane that the developer had paid for. I have an objection to that, and I'd like to see something, well, you know me and left turn lanes. I've been fighting this issue for 10 years. Sorry, George, it's your turn. Greg, it's your turn now.
You don't have any more?
Hell, we got a rookie here tonight. We want him to come back.
Yeah, be careful. I want to come back sometime.
Yeah. Wait till he comes in when he has to defend a project. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I have a.
Go ahead, Dave.
As long as we're peeving here, I have one peeve. It's a small one, and I'd like some advice from a traffic engineer, I think, on this. And it's a situation that I've noticed occurring. The exemplar is at the intersection of US 1 and 510, coming westbound on 510 to make a left turn onto southbound US 1. Okay, so you've got the major Hess station, and in the morning you have every lawn maintenance company in the county coming west or eastbound on 510, all going in to the Hess station to fuel and get stuff. So you're trying to get into the left lane to go south. Now, what I need is a strategy for how to do battle with, we have a left turn lane that has now become one of these center lanes, but it's not marked as a center lane with people. So these guys are using the left turn lane to make their turn into the Hess station. And they've got bigger vehicles than I do. So I can't get into the left turn lane to go southbound.
You need to learn Taekwondo driving.
It's become really, it's become like a real challenge there, and I don't know what the standards are for that turn lane, whether we've compressed things really tightly, or what the problem is. But we've got a real issue in situations like that where people are duking it out. And you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I've seen people come nose to nose in that lane. And,
Yeah, I think what happens is the eastbound drivers trying to get into the gas station, they cross the double yellow.
Exactly.
And then occupy that left,
And then they
actually
park.
the westbound left
They
turn.
park, and then they get 2 or 3 of them behind them, and all these other people who want to make the left turn are stacked in the through traffic lane.
So we've got an
and the
opaque
whole
feature.
place just gets into this mess. I mean, it just
Yeah,
becomes
when people
total
cross
congestion.
right, when people cross the double yellow and do things that they're not supposed to do, like pass or try to turn in the other direction, that's a violation of the law, and it ends up on law enforcement to enforce that. There's little that we can do, because they're violating the law, and anything that we could do as far as changing signal timing is probably not going to prevent that.
Yeah, I'm afraid the geometry of that particular location doesn't lend itself well to a good solution in terms of lengthening anything, or I mean, you're just constrained.
Well, it's one of the reasons why when we go to widen 510 in the future, we're going to extend that median, that barrier back from the intersection so that opening into the gas station is no longer there, and they have to go beyond it and U-turn and come back.
You could
to prevent
do it with
that kind of
stakes
conflict.
now. You could do it with little stakes.
No, it'll be with a concrete curb.
So when you widen it, when the bait shop's gone, and then there'll be a median there, so the eastbound will not be able to turn left into that gas station?
That's correct, because what we've got to do is we've got to actually
problem,
put...
David.
Oh my God! Wait! How are
We'll be
you're not
be
going
gone.
to just? Where's the other entrance going to be then? You're not going to have just that one entrance on US 1 into that Hess station, which is probably the most popular gas station in the county.
Actually, Chevron.
Yeah, they've got to go beyond it and U-turn, just like they do at 60 and 58th. Any of those close-up driveways, they've got to go past it, U-turn, and come back, because when you put in dual lefts, which there'll be dual left turn lanes there for that movement that you're trying to make, and when you put in dual lefts, you need almost 500 feet of distance in order for storage and taper. So.
Oh my God!
They'll be able to go
running in the Disney gift store looking for donuts.
They'll be able to go into that shopping center that we approved, and make a turnaround in the shopping center, and then come back into.
Can I raise one question too? Talking about turn lanes, we had a issue come up on Indian River Boulevard, and where the developer was not required to do a right turn lane because they didn't think it was enough. There wasn't enough cars. However, the speed that are hit on Indian River Boulevard without having a right turn lane could be a problem. How much leeway do we have? I know you've taken the amount of cars that will be making a right-hand turn and general traffic on that road, but the speed.
Well, it does come into play because, as Mike mentioned, if you have just a raw number of turns, it's 75. You have 75 an hour. You can make them put in a right turn lane. If it's on a high-speed road with a greater volume, that criteria is lowered down to 40. So it takes as little as 40 right turns to make them put in the right turn lane. In the case of that development, I don't think they even met the 40. So we couldn't force them.
And once again, it wasn't the volume, Chris, but the speed.
Right.
Because I said, if you go down Indian River Boulevard, which I do frequently, and the speeds that are there, and if somebody's making a right-hand turn, it could, I just thought from a safety issue. I realized we couldn't impose that on the developer at that point, but.
Right, but it's kind of the same situation as the left turn lanes. If they don't meet that threshold for an average peak hour condition, where do you make that threshold? And that's what we chose. And like I said, we're already one of 2 counties that are the strictest out of 67 counties in the state. We're one of 2 that have the strictest turn lane standards. When McMahon and Associates did the study in 2006, they agreed that, and they said you're already very strict. There's no need to tighten those screws anymore. So when we brought it to the board agreed, and they voted to keep our standards in place. I think at that time, if they'd have felt that we were out of whack or they needed some adjustments, they would have had us do that. But we didn't have any safety reason to adjust them. So,
thank you.
Chris, I guess it's kind of a philosophical question, but
some of the frustration that we have up here, you've experienced that when it looks as though even though you followed the standard and the formula to its exactness, the people that are traveling the road, like Donna, sometimes in that 510, 66th area, 58th, it just seems that you really need that extra turn there. And I guess that's just a common occurrence in whenever trying to meet those standards, but at the same time, you think common sense would cause you to have an addition in an area like that.
Yeah, and we struggle with that but there's one person missing here tonight, and that's the developer who would be arguing against it if we were trying to enforce a lower standard, a stronger standard. If we were to say, well, let's go with 20, let's go with 15, let's go with 5 left turns required turn lane. I mean, he's going to be arguing that, well, what is the engineering basis for that? Sure. We really don't have anything. He's going to have a traffic engineer that he pays is going to tell you that that's not necessary. And we wouldn't have anything to fight against that with, because we're already one of the strongest standards in the state.
Any other questions?
Can we talk about level C service and finishing the grid? Or is that another night?
We can talk about finishing the grid, but you're not going to get far on level C, I can guarantee you that one.
Nope. All right, thank you very much, Chris.
Okay.
Thank you. With that, attorneys matters.
I was informed by Stan Bowling that this might be our last meeting of the month, so I'll just go ahead and announce. I think most of you guys already know, but this will be my last meeting. This will be my last month with the county, and it's been an honor to work with the Planning and Zoning Commission for the last 3 years. You guys have been a great group, and I've always said that this has been the greatest challenge of my job, working with the Planning and Zoning Commission. Anytime there's an item that comes before you all, you attack it from your own perspective, and you really do put a very solid evaluation to every project that comes before you. So it's always been a challenge, but it's also been a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and I know all commissioners, we have really enjoyed our relationship with you and your professionalism and your humor, and we certainly wish you the best in everything you're going to do.
Sorry to see you go.
And we are sorry to see you go.
You will be deeply missed. Really. I'm so sorry to see you leave.
Let's not swell his head too much.
I think George Hammershaw got the champagne cork going over there. So.
All right, with that, we are adjourned.